Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Oh, sorry.
I need coffee. You talk.
Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome back with another Q&Raph. I'm Thomas, Community Manager for Stars Reach, and here with me we have always the incredible Raph. Today we're gonna speak about, about a lot of stuff. But first, I would like to read to you, Raph, some of the comments that the community members left below the previous videos. The first one from, and here, I need some help reading the name, but Pelly's Rules.
Pally's Rules.
Really enjoyed hearing about the beginning of development. Second one from Napiet, guys, you need to find easier names for me, okay? I'm an Italian guy. I'm not really Napiet. What does that? Okay, really enjoyed this.
Napiet's one of our. He's one of the streamers who's been following us for a while.
Okay. I apologize. Yeah. I will subscribe to your Twitch or whatever. I'm really sorry about that. Really enjoyed this. Fascinating to hear about games' early development and the philosophy driving things. Stone Legend. Now I can already recognize some names. Awesome info like always. I love how detailed and transparent you guys are. Well, I never speak actually. Raph speaks the most, but thank you very much. This is what MMORPG developers were always supposed to do: create passion projects instead of clone projects, which is something that we discussed probably the first video. Where we spoke about creating something new. Oh no, probably the second video. Yeah. And then we have Jehu. Sorry, I'm trying.
Yeah, I hope you're going to put like a little box on the bottom of the
I will show that. I'm very happy Raph decided to go with sci-fi over fantasy setting, because there are very few good sci-fi games out there, especially an MMO. This game has an amazing community with passionate and friendly developers, but not me. No, just kidding. And can't wait for the full release of the game.
Well, it is technically science fantasy, not just sci-fi. And, there are some somewhat fantastical elements to the setting and the lore. So if folks have not taken a look, we actually just dropped a new lore story today, and it's called Staying Grounded. It's up on our website, and it's the first chapter of 3 in a story about the origins of the Transplanetary League. And where it all came from. And you'll see some of the science fantasy elements beginning to creep in.
I'll leave the link below in the description for you guys if you want to read that. Then we received some questions. Okay, I picked some. One of these is space travel by... Okay, I need to... I forgot the name. Dao Xin? They're gonna sue me for... I know that. But is space travel actually a core element? Certainly, it is an important part of the backstory. Yeah. But are there really any active experiential loops? Is it possible experiential?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Experiential.
Yeah. Experiential loops for traveling space planned?
Yes. Yes, there are. So,
okay, fine. Next one. No, just kidding. We already lost too much reading.
We can definitely talk about space a bit. So,
okay.
The game is always meant to be as much about the space as the ground, and of course, a lot of people will favor the ground. They'll tend to pay more attention to the ground. Space is going to have less variety than the planets, right? That's sort of the nature of space. I mean, it's big and black and full of stars, right? So, but we made a point of making sure that all of the different game systems work just as much in space as they do on the ground. You can engage in mining, you can build space stations and all the rest. So I am hoping that we do see things like player cities in space. space stations of substantial size, trading outposts, all of that should be possible. But of course, the big thing that gets layered on top of it that is different is space flight and flying around in a spaceship. We've had our earliest prototypes of flying around in a spaceship for a very, very long time. Today in the pre-alpha, people are flying around only in spacesuits. So we don't have spaceships in there yet. But we did movement prototypes for space flight for almost 4 years ago, I think. We probably even have some video of them. You can still boot up the old prototypes and fly around. In those prototypes, some of the things that we did were we set up some basic ship locomotion so that we could test out that we could share the control scheme between ground and space and make sure that it was workable with both the fixed reticle and with our free cursor control mode. And part of the point is that you should be able to shoot in one direction while flying your ship in another, right? Like, same as you can on the ground.
Yeah.
Now, we also tested out that you could do things like do building and so on from space. But the core experience of space and space flight is meant to be still capturing some of that arcadey vibe. But now, instead of thinking just in terms of we use bullet hell and a couple of other references when we talk about the arcadey vibe on the ground. In space, what I really want is to capture some of the vibe, not the gameplay, but the vibe of those old 80s shoot 'em up arcade games, where you are flying around these zippy ships and you're encountering whatever the heck those things are in Space Invaders and Galaga, space bugs, space spiders, I don't know. I guess space is apparently full of insects in the 1980s. Centipedes and everything. And we really want that feeling of arcadey accessibility, right? We have full 6 degree of freedom spaceflight. So that means that as you're flying, you can end up at weird angles to everybody else. And there isn't an up, right, in that sense. So we have that. And we actually debated that a lot because there was a lot of worry on my part that it was too inaccessible for most people, that most people need an orientation as to where up is. In fact, one of the things we talked about was always showing the line of the Milky Way, what's called the plane of the ecliptic, the spot where the stars are dense, so that you have at least a horizon line to orient you, right? That's one of the things that we've talked about a lot. So spaceflight is meant to be fairly action-y, flying around, blasting, with inertial ships and so on, shooting at asteroids and having the things like crystals and other resources fly out and you scoop them up and grab them. And in fact, one of the things that we prototyped was actually scooping them up and putting them not just in your cargo hold, but dragging them behind your ship, like a 3D game of Snake. And then the space spiders and bugs can come and steal them from you off of your tail, right? And that was taken actually from an 80s arcade game called Sinistar. That's famously one of the hardest arcade games ever, where you shoot asteroids, gather crystals to make bombs to fight off a giant robot enemy that in some ways is an inspiration for our servitors. There's a it's called the Sinistar in that arcade game. It has a famous audio line. Maybe you can insert it. But we actually have concept art of a giant flying disembodied servitor head. I think you used it in your last video, actually.
Did I?
Big robot head and spaceship coming together in front of a black hole worm gate.
Probably, yeah.
So there was some Sinistar inspiration for that guy. We want worms hiding inside the asteroids and space spiders weaving webs and flying through nebulas and scooping up the nebula gases. We want all of that kind of thing. We are starting out with single-seater ships first, and that's just because we have to take it a step at a time. Single-seat ships first, then modular ships. And then eventually we plan to get to multi-person ships. So one person could be piloting and another can be shooting. And eventually we'd like to get to ships that you can walk around in, which we had on Star Wars Galaxies. We had that, and people would decorate the interior of their space yacht, right? So we'd like to get all the way to there. But all we're promising for launch is the single-seater ships right now. And we'll see how far we manage to get.
Okay.
And we'll just add the rest post-launch.
Interesting. Okay.
It is important to ferry goods around the galaxy, right? If somebody strikes it rich on a planet and somebody someplace else needs those materials to craft, someone is going to physically have to carry the goods from one place to the other. And if those goods are interdicted, as in the other short story, Interdicted, then the servitors may actually search your ship, take those goods back away because they're illegal to transport.
Oh.
So that's why we have a smuggling skill tree in the game, so that you can use that to avoid servitor searches for goods that you're not supposed to be moving between planets. So yeah, spaceflight's pretty important to the games. It's how you explore to find new planets. It's how you move goods between worlds. And it should have an interesting combat loop and resource extraction game of its own.
In connection to this, some community members seem to think that we will be flying around in ships in the same way as Star Citizen, or less often. And he's asking if it will be like that or not, if there is the connection, the impression behind that, of losing a lot of time with this spaceship, maybe.
Well, I think certainly the way I pictured in my head is that if you are at a starbase or space station, you walk to a hangar of some sort, and then you click, and then you appear as a spaceship outside, and you go flying, and you fly around. And there's probably even a button that you can press while you are in your spaceship to hop out of it and fly around with your little jetpack on your back in just a spacesuit, and then get back in the ship and fly off. So I'm not sure what they're picturing in terms of Star Citizen, but that is absolutely right. The goal. We are not looking at having the big capital ships just yet, right? Like that part will take longer.
Next question. Actually, it's a comment. During our last videos, we called it gameplay. But we did not speak too much about gameplay. In this, they were hoping for a talk that was actually about gameplay and not the tech stuff. Because probably, we would dive a lot into other stuff, and I may ask the wrong question, but okay, let's get maybe a little bit into the gameplay for a moment before sharing some really, I don't want to say really old videos, but some old videos, okay?
Okay, all right.
Because those are not that far away, but still.
So, sure. I mean, I think the big thing to do first, we do hear people saying, hey, so is this game just No Man's Sky, right? Only supposedly an MMO? Is it just a survival game? We see people asking those questions online. And I get it if people look at the pre-alpha right now and they draw that conclusion. But make no mistake, we are making a full-blown sandbox MMO. And that means that we are embracing all of the kinds of things that you can do with MMO scale that you can't really do with limited multiplayer, right? No Man's Sky, of course, is interesting because they have sort of limited multiplayer but persistent shared universe. So they're in an interesting hybrid. But there's a lot of things that are unique that happen when you have a world full of all the other people at the same time. So we are not a small-scale survival game. We're a game about thousands and thousands of people playing together in a shared setting and interacting with one another, where you explore, settle, and rule these alien worlds, right? So let's start with who you are. This is an RPG. So that means you have a character. The character has stats. There is a set of RPG stats. There's 6 of them that affect your strength and your your constitution and so on, right? 6 stats that affect your character and how they perform in the game. Those feed into 3 RPG bars. We have a health bar. We have a focus bar, which is kind of sci-fi mana. We use it for when you are using special actions or using brain power. And stamina, which we use for physical things like climbing rock faces, that kind of thing. So that means that your character is basically made of 3 stats per bar. One that determines how fast it regens, one that determines how big its max size is, one that determines how quickly you spend it. Okay? And people who are Galaxies veterans might remember that that's not that different from how the ham system worked on Galaxies. So there's definitely some similarities there. So health, focus, stamina. You have quite a lot of control over customizing your avatar. We're going to have support full body morphing and all of that kind of thing. So morphing your face, your body, weight, muscularity, gender, obviously, all of that kind of thing is going to be there. So now, who are you in the game? You are an immigrant, right? You are leaving behind your home world. You're leaving behind just the planets that you've been living on and are part of the Transplanetary League now. You are venturing forth to settle the galaxy. This is a government that's been formed by the 8 different playable species in the game under the auspices of the servitors, who have allowed humans to leave their home world so that they don't go extinct. Okay? So you are being set loose in the galaxy to make a new life among the stars. The galaxy is simulated, as we've talked about. So all these worlds are live. Lakes freeze in the winter, and meteor strikes can blow craters in the ground. Mm-hmm. All of these things are happening when you come to these planets. You, as a player, can affect all of that. You can also cause, craters, or drill through an asteroid, or drive creatures extinct, right? So it's a very interactive kind of setting. In most MMOs, we're used to worlds that are static, that you can't change, right? Mm-hmm. And of course, in many survival games, we're used to worlds that you can change at least somewhat, right? We're trying to marry those 2 flavors back together, mm-hmm. right? So we want both. This galaxy is built out of space sectors and planets that are attached to those space sectors. So wormholes, these wormholes can be opened, and there are worm gates that lead you from space sector to space sector. And then a space sector may contain planets that you can land on. Mm-hmm. Space sectors, sometimes worm gates collapse and we lose access to that sector. Sometimes new ones open and we discover new sectors that have new planets on the other side. This matters because when meteors crash onto a planet, the crater they leave is permanent. The land does not heal back up, mm-hmm. right? Everything in these worlds is persisted and saved. So players are constantly going to be discovering new worlds. Sometimes they will move in and live there, and sometimes they will abandon them. And abandoned worlds may get lost. They may get lost in space. There are a lot of things out there in space. The aforementioned space spiders. The wormholes actually have worms in them. There are alien creatures on the planets, right? It is a fantastical galaxy. This is not hard sci-fi. It is science fantasy. It's full of space opera and daring do, right? We draw a lot of inspiration from older sci-fi. Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon period sci-fi, and 60s and 70s sci-fi, bug-eyed monsters, and all of that kind of thing, right? Which is the same sort of inspiration that a lot of Star Wars and Star Trek were originally pulling from, right? So we're going back to some of those roots and drawing inspiration from those things too. And that means ray guns and blasters and flying saucers and all of that kind of fun stuff is out there in space. So You as a player, you start out going through your transplanetary emigration process.
Mm-hmm.
We apologize for having melted you when we pulled you through the radiation belt to the emigration station. We're going to ask you to please, step into the reconstitution booth and sculpt yourself into whatever you like, since we've accidentally turned you into a puddle of goo. And if you make yourself a little better than you used to be, take advantage of the moment. Why not, right? Why not? And then we're going to need you to fill out a little bit of a CV or a resume. Tell us what kinds of things you know how to do. And that's your chance to tell us, oh, yeah, no, I trained in being a scout or a ranger or a chef or whatever.
Fighter. Yeah.
Fighter, exactly. You get to tell us.
Mm-hmm.
And that will let us, that's effectively how you select your starter basket of skills. Standing in line in front of a bureaucrat. Getting your passport photo taken. That's what will happen. And at the end of it, you get handed your starter ship and starter tools. And we send you to tutorial, where you get to basically demonstrate that you know the basic ropes, right? Like how to move, how to fight, that kind of thing. It's sort of like an Outward Bound experience for those who've ever done those, or advanced training if you're like a scout, or whatever. You go do those kinds of training things. Prove that you can survive a night in the wilderness, kind of thing. And then after that, we will drop you on an established planet, one that already has all of the cities and facilities that a newbie planet needs. One with a bank, one with a spaceport, one with a market, all of those things that you can use as your first base of operations. When you head out into space, you are going to have to deal with venturing into wilder areas, maybe getting attacked by these space spiders and so on. Maybe you land on a strange, mysterious planet that's very, very swampy, has tons of lakes and water and whatever, and gets fairly cold. Okay, you land your spaceship. There's going to be a designated landing zone where you come in. The servitors are not letting you land just anywhere on planets. You have areas of the planet that they're allowing you in because they're very worried that humans are going to wreck the garden. Yeah. After all, humans did that to their homeworlds. So, yeah, they're worried about that. So you don't get to just roam anywhere on the planet. Start at your designated landing zone, venture out into the swamp. Turns out there's flying fuzzy ice snakes curling between the trees of the swamp as you're wading through the water. You're going to notice that wading through the water slows you down. You're going to notice that patches of ice remain on the water and they're slippery. These fuzzy ice snakes notice you. You see, you can actually see some of what they're thinking because they pop bubbles over their head with some of their thoughts. On different planets, you may not be able to understand them. You may have to go learn xenolinguistics in order to figure out what it is that they're saying, whether or not they are aggressive, whether or not they're hungry and think that you're tasty. But, right now you don't have time for nuance. You pull out the blaster that you started with and you start shooting at them, okay? Mm-hmm. Combat is action arcadey, but it has all of the intricacy of an RPG system underneath it. These ice creatures are almost certainly going to have immunity to cold style attacks. They may have vulnerability to fire style attacks.
Clearly.
They may have resistances to poison. Okay. Mm-hmm. So all of those kinds of RPG things are there, as well as states like stun state and so on. So that if you stun something, you can then have hit it for double damage, right? All of those kinds of RPG mechanics are still present. It's just that we have an action RPG style of combat where your aim matters, but you can choose to use weapons that have homing shots if you're not good at action combat. So you have a variety of different sorts of weapon choices, ranging from sci-fi-ish melee to energy bows to blasters and long-range weapons, and they all have slightly different flavors. As you blast away, some of your shots hit the trees, and the trees catch fire,
right?
And the fire starts to spread. Now you're in trouble. Ice snakes, they fly away. And now you're surrounded by fire. The fire is causing all of the water, the frozen water, to melt. the ice is now melting in the swamp, and you are now at risk of catching fire. What are you going to do?
Alt
Okay,
F4.
and yeah, well, I mean, you can solve the problem in more than one way. You could blast away at the cliff that is holding back a frozen lake and cause a flood to come out and put out the fire, because we have that dynamic world, right? That simulated world isn't there just because it's a cool science experiment. It's there because it adds cool gameplay. It lets us do things and give you that sensation of a world that's more alive. So now you burn down the forest, but you did kill some of those ice fire snakes or whatever, and the fire killed some of the snakes. You can go loot those, grab them, pick them up. You may have, in knocking down the cliff, you may have exposed a vein of a cool mineral. You can use a mining tool in order to mine it. So the RPG loop of earning XP from fighting monsters, finding loot, all of that kind of thing is there. Okay, on this planet, you might find a frozen cliff face, and you have to melt your way through it and find behind it an abandoned alien laboratory, one of the research centers for the old ones, that still has in it fragments of old one artifacts. They're the species that genetically engineered and terraformed the whole garden. And those are extremely valuable crafting components that you can use in order to make very high-end crafting goods. So those are now loot that is extremely valuable. So you have to make it back to your ship, fly off, and as you are flying off, a servitor comes by and scans your ship and says, wait a minute, you're carrying old one goods. We're going to kill you now because that's not allowed. And now is when you wish that you had spent time learning smuggler skills in order to get away. Dodge them, get away, etc. Head back to the planet. Now's when you say, okay, who can I sell these to, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not a crafter. And so you can now go hunting for players who are merchants or crafters who may need these artifacts in order to craft high-end weapons, right? And you've earned enough XP along the way that you can, now that you're back here, now's the chance for you to go back to school, so to speak, and pick up some new skills. Maybe you decide, maybe I want some of that smuggler track.
Yeah.
Well, to get to be a smuggler, I'm going to have to level up in rangering, because it's a high-end or in merchanting logistics, right? So it is a full RPG. It's just a full RPG with a lot of ways to play it, set in a world that is more dynamic, okay? And those ways to play include you can farm, or you can run a business, you can mine for alien crystals or stone or whatever. You can be a crafter, make furniture, or make a spaceship. Be an architect, whatever. You can just be a combat player and fight off alien creatures. You can
be a guy that tutors new players, maybe.
You can be somebody who mentors players, because we have a leadership skill track where you earn experience points from helping other people. And, whether that is helping them when they are in a party, leading parties earns you experience in leadership, or helping newbies out in their first, when they first come in. Newbies enter the game with a golden ticket resource that is essentially a coupon for leadership XP. And so you need to go help those newbies so that they will give you their coupon. So we're trying to build that, for people who want to be leaders, we're trying to make that be part of the game loop, where they need to be actively helping others. Entertaining players, being a politician is part of leadership. Running a cantina, if you want to do that. Exploring the planets and making maps. You don't have a mini map in this game until you buy one from another player who's an explorer. So all of these, though, are basically you earn XP by doing something. You do the activity, whatever activity is you enjoy, you earn XP by doing it. And you should also be earning money by doing it. Then you take that, the money and the XP, you come back to town, you spend the XP on leveling up your skills. You spend the money on getting new gear so you can take advantage of the skills. If you learn sniping and you don't have a sniper rifle, sniping isn't going to do you any good. It only works if you have the sniper rifle. So you need the skill and the item. And the items all break and decay over time. But you buy them from other players because players make all of the gear. So you need the skill plus the item. And then that gives you the chance to get better and go out and do it again. So there's a loop there, right? It's a classic RPG. It's just that some of those ways to play are economic, some of them are social, some of them are combat, some of them are,
a society in a video game.
Yes, where the different ways to play, each way to play provides value to other players. If you are that miner, you are outputting rare minerals and so on. You make your money by selling the minerals, and you get better at the mining and the digging. But that means a crafter needs your minerals in order to craft with. And they get better when people use the things that they crafted. Okay? So it isn't just them making 1,000 copies of a shirt over and over again and grinding away. Instead, they need to make things other people want and use. And when they do that, they get rewarded for it. Which means they're making a cool blaster, fantastic. Well, the warrior needs the blasters that the crafters make, right? And they then go out and they depend on the crafters for their weapons. And guess who needs the warrior? Well, that miner, because the miner's no good at fighting, and they need a bodyguard while they're out there on the dangerous planet full of flying furry frozen ice snakes, right? So it's set up so you can solo, if you choose. You can pick up all 4 of those and carry with you a mining tool, be a crafter, set up crafting station, be a
fighter, combat,
a warrior, of some sort, pistol or sniper, whatever path it is you choose, right? Because we allow you to essentially multi-class or multi-job when you're on a given adventure. And then when you come back to camp or town or your ship, that's when you can swap out which tools that you take with you. If you are working with a group, then you might say, well, I'm going to take 4 weapons with me. The miner takes 4 mining things with them, and so on. And so if you're soloing, you take 1 of each. And if you are in a party, you divide up the specialties, right? And then you might say, well, I'll be our warrior plus healer. You can be our miner plus scout, right? And that way you can coordinate and build something that feels more like a traditional RPG party where you depend on the other players moment to moment. So it's really designed to be flexible so that you can solo or group up and get the benefits of it. You don't get more hit points. And that's a big, important distinction, right? Like this, gaining more hit points is one of the reasons why you get out-leveled by your friends in other games, right? And we keep everybody on roughly the same power level. Instead, what you gain is capabilities. You gain new special moves and new special attacks, let's say, new mining capabilities, etc. So you get better, but you are still just as vulnerable as you ever were. So fighting a level 50 thing, we like saying that all of our characters, all players are level 10. Okay? And there's plenty of things out there that are level 1 through 10, right? Bunny rabbits and squirrels and whatever. And then there's plenty of things that are like level 50. And that means a single level 50 might one hit kill you. They're very dangerous, right? And you just need to plan for that, which is why death in this game works a little bit differently. If you get killed, you're downed, your ghost gets up and stands over your body waving, but you're not truly dead. We have relifing technology that the servitors gave us. Any player can just run up to where you died and bring you back.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Like right
they can
now.
just run up and bring you back. They're vulnerable while they do it. They got to sit and kneel next to you for a few minutes. So if that level 50 giant monster is there, they might die right by you. Right? So That's a very different dynamic. Wiping in a fight again, party wipe means all of you were knocked out at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? As long as there's one of you alive, they can bring the others back. So that's a different dynamic. Let's say that nobody brings you back. You can go back to your last save point. Anything that you picked up since your last save point stays where you died. Okay? So if you had grabbed those minerals that were there by the ice snake fire, you went back to your ship. Great. Those minerals are safe because your landing zone is a checkpoint. Then you go back to investigate that alien lab, you find those artifacts inside. And that's when you find the boss monster and get killed. Those alien artifacts are still there by your body. Okay? You wake up back at your checkpoint, at your camp or landing zone. And so, now you do have a bit of a corpse recovery thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you can ask for a friend to come get you, to help you, okay? We allow people on your friends list to instantiate a clone of themselves next to you that cannot carry their inventory, but can carry their tool belt. So just their tools. And they can show up instantly to help you, and you can try to go recover your corpse. But they can't transport goods. You can't then hand them the artifacts and say, rewind to where you came from, because they can't carry anything. Okay? So we're trying to make it so that friends can always play together really easily, right? Because we want to support really short sessions of it. Now that you have the artifacts, we like saying people fast, like your friend teleporting you. Goods move slow. You're going to have to transport those artifacts by hand. And that's when you might want the smuggling and all the rest, right? So it's modernizing the way that MMOs play, but the systems that are in MMOs are there. There are still dungeons with monsters, with loot, raid level fights, skill progression, partying up, guilds. All of those systems are there. But they're in a world that is more like a Minecraft, but more, right? And that's the step where I think we are no longer something like No Man's Sky. We're something that is, in many ways, much more in the tradition of the classic sandbox MMOs of the past.
I would like to show you, Raph, one video that I found from your master repository, which is this build mode video, this concept.
Yes.
So my question is, I can imagine what this is, but not everybody can. Could you explain what are people watching right now?
So this is from our early movement and controls prototype, standalone prototype. People can see this actually in the movement video that we did a while back. It's on our channel. And this was when we were testing out the interface for block style building as opposed to tile style building. And so this was UI tests of how it might feel to do block building in the game. Block building is in the game right now. So maybe we can show some video of what this system turned into. Players are able to build using individual blocks or build using terraforming or build using tiles, basically pre-made pieces. And players are dazzling us already with the kinds of things that they're pulling off.
And how complicated it was to implement this building system that we have today?
I mean, the basics of implementing this was not that hard, other than the challenges of making it work with the rest of the simulation, right? And the camera. The cameras, we're still wrestling with getting the camera good. But these blocks are the same resolution size as our simulation system is. So when you're doing this, you're actually building with terrain that happens to look like blocks. That's why they are the size that they are, and they can interact with the simulation. Players have been making amazing things with these. Lately, they have been using them to build molds for casting things out of molten stone or metal.
And second video is a jetpack. Is called jetpack. Yeah, MP4.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about this in our movement video too. I should explain that our process is when we have a new system that we are going to put into the game, we prefer to prototype it standalone. And we actually spent the first several years of this game's development building standalone prototypes for all kinds of things. AI systems, movement systems, simulation, world generation, combat, all of these things had standalone playable games with crappy graphics. Okay. And these often had all of these, you see zillions of fields here to adjust, right?
Yeah.
These were all there so that designers could play with the fields, adjust the values, and we could decide what felt good. What was it that gave the feeling that we wanted? Originally, we started out with plain old flight, and we decided it wasn't fun enough. And we replaced it with this more jetpack style of motion. And we spent, a few weeks tuning it so that the jetpack would feel good. Because you use controls like that moment to moment more often than anything else in the game. And so they have to feel really good. Otherwise, you feel like the whole game is bad. So you always want to tune the thing that the player does most often is what you want to tune the most. And this prototype helped us do that for jetpack flight.
Interesting. And yeah. All right. Okay. So I think that we are done for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you for your comments and some of the questions that you guys wrote below the other videos. If you have more, please ask them below. Don't be shy, write them. And yeah, anything to add, Raph?
No, I will go back to my coffee and
it's the same coffee.
I look forward to the next video.
Amazing. Okay, thank you very much, guys, and see you soon. Bye bye.